Thank you so very much. It is an honor to be invited and to be among such a distinguished group of scholars and colleagues today in this extraordinary venue. I'm going to change the pattern a little bit. As the introduction mentioned, I'm Laurie Rush. I'm a U.S. Army archaeologist, and I work in support of the U.S. 10th Mountain Division at Fort Drum, New York. The 10th Mountain Division is the most deployed division in the United States Army and is currently serving in multiple locations around the world. As a bit of a change of pace for all of you, I'm going to ask you now to think back to Commander Curtis's last couple of slides where he showed you deploying British personnel. And I want you all to try and pretend that you are a soldier getting ready for deployment and that Dr. Rush is going to be giving you advice. And I like to begin my training sessions with a question. So how many of you now are familiar with the idea of monuments officers? And I would hope everyone, since you've been being briefed by monuments officers and we've talked about them extensively, but now I would like to show you these four gentlemen. Who in this audience knows who any of them might be? Does anybody recognize Stefano, one Italian colleague? These four gentlemen are just one of hundreds of stewards of Italian cultural property who risked their lives saving paintings and artifacts and the contents of the museums that we've been discussing today. The reason I'm taking the time to introduce them to you, and also many of their colleagues whose names have almost been lost to history, is that if it had not been for them, there would have been nothing for the monuments officers to rescue. These are the individuals that made it possible for the secret locations of the library books and the paintings and all of those evacuated objects. And as we talked about this morning, you've met some of these heroes today who are devoting their lives to making sure that cultural property might be saved in the event of a disaster. So if I was preparing you to go to a foreign field of battle, what I would advise you to do is find those heroes on your battlefield. And it's not easy to do, but one of the reasons to look for those heroes and heroines are they are going to be the ones that can guide you through the cultural property protection process. They're the ones that are going to give you the keys to what needs to be protected in their community. What are their sacred places? What are their sacred features? We had a brief discussion of the natural resources earlier this morning. What is this sacred spring of water, and why do we need to give it special protection? All these heroes, and there's thousands and thousands of them around the world. I've only chosen to show you a handful of the ones that I've been lucky enough to meet and have had the honor to talk to. But you're going to find these people anywhere you go, and they're putting their lives on the line, and they need your help. And it's so important as part of that identification process to listen to them. That is going to be one of your keys to success. So what do we want to identify what do we want to protect. We've heard discussions of lists, and lists do have their place, but I would suggest it's only a very, very tiny place. And we're finding that some of our NGOs are getting bogged down in list making. In the US, and maybe around the world, there's a children's game. It's called Leapfrog. And when you play Leapfrog, a child crouches down very low, and the other child hops over that child. I would suggest that maybe we could leapfrog over some of our discussions of list making and bounce right straight to protecting the cultural property that matters, the property that those people that you're listening to will tell you is important. Commander Curtis showed you the pyramid of what's important, and he showed you that at the bottom is that list of local values. And that quite often ends up being much more important than anything you'd find at the top of the list. So in this slide that you see here, I've given examples of very easy things, in my opinion, to identify in different places. It could be museums, it could be zoos, it could be the rhinoceros sculpture in Bassano El Grappa. And you'll notice the illuminated botanical garden. And to my delight and surprise last evening, I can tell you that there's an illuminated botanical garden within a block of the quarters where we're so graciously being hosted. And I would encourage all of you to go tonight. And our British friends will be delighted to know that it is celebrating a piece of British cultural heritage, which is the Alice in Wonderland theme. I also have included musicians. This is a lovely little jazz band that we enjoyed in Tbilisi. Thank you, Vernon. And also remembering the keepers of the heritage. I have a photograph of a lovely woman who took the time to teach me and my daughter the basic methods of making baskets in Sardinia. So as we travel and as we think about cultural property, yes, there are going to be lists. There are going to be the global list, the UNESCO list. There may be national lists. There may be city lists. But what you're going to really need to do, and when we're thinking about what matters at the local level, and also remembering both Captain Lebert and Commander Curtis talked about the fact that those of us who work for the military have to support a military mission. And we want that mission to be successful, and we want our soldiers to come home to their families happy and healthy and with a success behind them. And so this slide shows you the greater challenges we have in damaging these kinds of aspects of cultural property. That's what gets soldiers killed. So for example, we have the tooth of the dragon, slain by Hazrat Ali to keep the Hazara people safe in the Bamiyan Valley. What would happen if that pointed stone were damaged by mistake? Would those soldiers who did that damage come home happy and healthy? Perhaps not. Does that tooth of the dragon have a sign saying, "Be careful of me, I'm the tooth of the dragon"? No, because every Hazara person knows what it is. So we have to watch out for those keys in the environment. We find in many cultures sacred plants and trees. We find open-air mosques in places like Djibouti. What would happen if a military vehicle ran over that mosque by mistake? And the soldiers had no idea what it might be. And we have examples again of the marketplaces, the places people gather. And we also have indigenous infrastructure. like this farmer's field in the Sahel in North Africa. What would happen if that hard work, again, were damaged by a military vehicle? And that is one reason why I'm so excited that the Hungarian colleagues are so interested in helping to work and prepare their Hungarian soldiers to be ready for these kinds of challenges in a world where we may not know where our soldiers are going to be needed next. So once we've identified what does practicing respect look like, I am so fortunate because another job for me at Fort Drum is diplomatic liaison between our 10th Mountain Division commanders and the indigenous people whose ancestral places, sacred sites, and ancestors are buried on Fort Drum. So it's my job to reach out to the clan mothers, warriors, and chiefs of the Oneida Indian Nation, the Onondaga Nation, and the St. Regis Mohawk tribe. And it's my honor to introduce those leaders to our commanding generals and their staffs. And so one way we show respect at Fort Drum is to offer head of state protocol. So when a clan mother comes to Fort Drum, she is treated with the same level of respect as any other sovereign leader of any other sovereign nation. So if we were to host Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, he would be given the same respect as Clan Mother Webster, Lake Clan Mother, Hawk Clan, Onondaga Nation. So we have a picture of one of those head of state gatherings, and you'll notice that the Haudenosaunee Confederacy flag is being displayed next to our national flags. I have other examples too. We had a colleague from UNESCO organize a workshop for South African peacekeepers, and it gave an opportunity for African military leaders to meet with museum professionals in the course of a workshop, and again, building those partnerships. We had a Peacekeeping and Training Center international meeting in New Zealand, where we were all greeted by Maori warriors in traditional dress with traditional greeting methods. And we have an example. Rachel was an enslaved woman who once lived on Fort Drum, and her gravestone, after more than 200 years, collapsed and was damaged. And we built a replacement, but we invited our soldiers to come and place it there so that they could gain respect for the previous people living on Fort Drum. So to summarize, if we wanted to turn this process into a simple slide, we need to figure out who are the stewards, who are the people in the community where we've arrived that we need to talk to and, most important, listen to. And they will help guide us to those valued objects and features in the landscape. And then we can build together the respectful behavior and help our soldiers learn those skills for identification and respect, which I believe and which I've experienced lead to good decisions during the course of the military mission and results in the appropriate action, guidance, support, and assistance that actually gives our soldiers the opportunity to save some heritage. And why do we want to do that? Because we don't want our soldiers to have to go back. We want to end with peace, not with continued conflict. And hopefully Bashika is still peaceful, I don't know, but the idea would be communities all over the world where people of different religions, different ethnicities are able to live together in peace and prosperity. And with that, I thank you.